Mm-hmm. You know about the Minoans? What's up with the Minoans? What's up with the Minoans? The Minoans. Well, Minoan, that whole idea to call the people that they call the Minoans, they really are like the Ionians, but they call them Minoans because this one European white man was like researching. He was all into like the Minotaur, the Minotaur bull, and so he went around looking for like artifacts, archaeology. So when he came across some things over there in the Crete area, like Greek Crete area and everything, he called this the Minoans. Now this is because he had this particular white man who called himself a researcher, archaeologist. You know, back in the days, people just doing things and they say, "Oh, I'm an archaeologist." Okay, boom. But something was flawed about a lot of his prospectus because he was all caught up. He had like a fetish about like Greek, like kind of Greek Greek mythology and certain things and ancient things. And he was like reading the Bible, like probably in the translation and stuff like that in English. So he wanted to find the Minotaur more on the Minotaur. So when he came across a lot of this archaeological remains and finds, digging up, he called it the Minoan people. So that there, the scholars and the scholarly consensus is that there is like an inaccuracy, this whole Minoan. But there's a lot of stuff already out there. It's like, although they correct it or they point out that the one who started it out was somewhat incorrect, don't you think? Me thinks he was. That they still kind of still promote this. They'll still promote it. So if you look up anything, look up the Minoan people, right? But here's the question here. I'm going to touch on this briefly because in some of our speaking about like the continent that's called Africa and the archaic name Tobia, but the name that people usually say that, like Ethiopia was named after the Greeks when they actually came into that region and met ones and ones who described themselves as Tobia, the Tob. But that's a whole other point right there. But it linked with the Greeks and then Hebrew, and then we hear a lot of folks saying that a lot of nonsense that either Hebrew come from Greek when actually it's the other way around. If you understand what the Bible, the scripture is truly saying. And many can't understand it because it's not the letter of the law, but it's the spirit, right? The Ruach HaKadosh, the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth. So here in the Spirit of truth, we're going to ask a couple of questions. So the people that are known as the Minoan people, more correctly in the English, called the Ionian people. Now, the Ionian people, get this right here, the Ionian people are let's just do this really quickly right here. Let's bring this out and let's get my sword. Where's my sword? There we go. My sword is right there. Open up my sword. And then let's go right here and let's put Javan. Now this is English, Javan. Now remember there's no J in Hebrew, but we have the Y. And then in the Koine Greek, we have the I. So Javan, you see Javan right there, right? Javan is linked with they have Yavan. That's modern Ashkenazi European Jews. Their mother tongue makes them say the wow as a vav, right? But really it would be Yawan. You can see how they have in the phonetic, Y-A-W, right? Which is correct, but then they put V. So Yauvan, trying to combine the two. But anyway, Yawan. If you contract Yawan, you get Ionian. Yawan, Ionian. The slowing it down, right? So you see what it has? Javan here, Ionia, or the latter-day Greek, or Greece. Now, the white Greeks, right, the popular Greeks that people call today, are the Graikoi people, the people of Hell, or Hellas. The people of Hellas, where we get like Hellenistic from. The ancient Greek, connected with the Bible narrative in Moshe's first book, are the Ionians. in some of the Ethiopic scrolls, the older scrolls, they refer to the Greeks as the Yonawian, the Yonawian, Yona. That's the connection with Yawan. And then in the English sense, the Y to I will be Ion. The I to the J to I or Y, and the V to W and O. Basically, just to break down the basic etymologicals of it right here, right? So here's where they confuse things. It's like saying like America, right? America was inhabited by native black and reddish brown, dark reddish brown skinned people, right? Ask Benjamin Franklin. He talked about building up another black country. What? America's a black country? Oh, reddish brown. Okay, I get you. Yeah. Anyway, so the Americans, the original Americans were black and brown, reddish brown, dark brown skinned people. It's a couple lighter skinned people, but basically, you know, according to the people who came over here and they wrote these things down in their books, so forth and so on, right? So that was original Americans. But today, if you say Americans, you're talking about some Anglo-Americans, people who came over here in Europe under this false assumption that they were the new Israelites and the native people were the Canaanites, and they play this game and everything like they do with the Bible and everything. So the same thing happened here, that we had the Ionians and then we had the Greeks, like the original Romans. So you hear some people say that the Romans were black people. The original Romans were actually called Etruscans, and they were black, dark, brown, reddish brown people. You can see some of the archaeology that they have not, you know, whitewashed or corrupted, so forth and so on. Some of it is still able to be seen. So here they say of the race, the Ionians, that is Greeks. No, what they do here is like what they do in a lot of things. They, for example, in America, they kind of have taken these other people's country and everything, and then they dress up at ball games, pretending, you know, a white man put on Indian paint and, you know, do all this like mockery and everything, and he pretends to be, or he said, I have a little bit of Indian blood in me, so, you know what I mean? You know how that kind of thing goes. So this is what happens. So it's almost like pretenders more than meets the eye. Like these pretenders, they be pretending. So the only connection that the Greeks are the latter white people who did the same thing that they do like in Australia and in America. They came and conquered and pushed out the people and subjugated the people. Well, the same thing the Graikoi, the children of Hellas, Hellas did to the Ionian people. The Yawan, Javanite people. And then we have here in Genesis 10 and 4, right? And then it says about the Isles of the Gentiles, had a very interesting reasonment on the clubhouse right there. So pointing this out, let's get back to our original point, just to give a context of who we're talking about. In ancient Egypt, these people are called the Keftiu people, right here, the Keftiu people. Right? The Keftiu people. So the Keftiu people, their language and their relation with Minoan Crete. Right? It's almost like white America. You know what I mean? Or black America is qualifying what type of Crete right here. So this is on Archaeology Wiki. Remember what Caesar said? Vini Vici, right? Vini Vidi Vici, but actually he said Winnie Weedy Wiki. Wiki means to conquer. Check it out. So here's our question about the Minoan people. We're getting a little bit more into the Minoan people are. It says that, you know, that Japheth, his descendants shall dwell in the tents of Shem. So what's interesting to find out from ancient Egypt, that the Minoan people were actually, we could say, black peoples, generally speaking, or reddish brown people, as we see right here in this setup. But here's my question. Here's my question right now, just as a start out question, looking at some of their linguistics and their language, right? Let's bring up this slide right here. Now with the Minoan people, right? This is right here. Now see, here's what they corrupted. You see how they put Hellenica? Now Hellenica, it's like the Native Americans were over here, black and brownish people over here in the Americas, right? Different tribes and everything, nations and all of that, ethnicities, but they basically were this stock of people, right? In America. The white man comes from Europe, right, with a charter from England or whatnot like that, to take somebody else's land and everything. And then they run around at ball games, dress up like Indians, putting on paint. And now because it's not PC anymore. They feel like, oh, they're taking away our culture. Your culture to steal from other people and then to mock them. Oh, Thanksgiving, right? It's coming up. You're going to celebrate Columbus and everything. Okay, I know it's not about the cancel culture, but you got to cancel cult, right? These cults, this cult of the academia mislabeling things, because these people, the Ionians, right, were at least 1,000 or so, between 500 to 1,000 years earlier than the Hellenistic people who took over their culture. You know what I'm saying? Like in America, we know that the Native Americans were here before. What's the date and time they give us about what was it? Not 1492 when they said they came over to America, but around about 400 years ago. Right? These people had nothing to do with England, America, white people, or any of their cult. The WASP, White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. But then it's almost like they put their name on top of somebody else's things in order to confuse the matter. Right? This is what we have to study. So here's the thing about these people. And this is how they're shown in ancient Egypt, the Keftiu. So these are the same people that I'm going to show you. This is from Egypt perspective of who the Keftiu were and what they approximately look like. Now, you got to recognize that this right here, a wall painting, is somewhat, you can see how the hair is supposed to be black, but it's gray because the paint either was chipped off or they purposely chipped it off. They're doing a lot of that with ancient Egyptian stuff. They're kind of like redoing it with their technology, and they're lighting it and changing up things. So you have to pay attention to this. Right? So now this is how the Minoan people show themselves. Right? This is how the Minoan people show themselves. You can see these seem like two men right there. Right? And so the Egyptians showing the Minoans here. Right? And the Egyptians showing the Keftiu, the Yonawian people. Right? Yonawian people. The Javanite people, according to KJV, right? And the people of Japheth. So the people of Japheth, actually, that whole Ham, Shem, and Japheth, one was black, one was white, and one was gray, is all BS. It's true that they were different nations, but their interpretation is full of white supremacy, rhetoric, hateful, nonsense, lies, and deception. Right? So we have to get out of that. Right? Come out of her, my people. Now, here's the question. So we're going to keep this short, right? Maybe a little 15-minute here, coming up on the 15-minute. Why do we find that a lot of the women, right? Like this picture here is a very ideal picture. The men seem to be reddish brown, right? Very much reddish brown, because that's the real complexion of black people. Some black people are black in the sense of very dark. So you see more of the blue-black tones, right? That sapphire, as it were. But some are so reddish brown that you see more of the brown tone right there. See, white people tell us that Adam means like red. Aleph Dam, first blood, the ground is the Adama. They'll say that Adam was a white man because when a white person blushes, you see some red in his cheeks. So I mean, they'll have to be blushing perpetually. That makes no sense there. But here we say, why are there women or their priestesses, their goddesses? Who are their women? This is my question. Who are their women? We're on to something here. Who are their women? Why do they always appear to be very like albinate. They seem to be very white. Laban in Hebrew, white. They seem to be very like pearly white. Like, you know what I'm saying? They're always showing their titties, their tatas, and everything like that. It's like Hooters. They're like Hooters, like Hooters. Why are the Javanite, the ancient Greek, the black Greek, why do the black Greeks seem to have these white female priestesses? Whose daughters were they? Were they the daughters of Canaan? Yes, against the real origin. They want to know the origin. White people looking to find out like who, who's who, how they got here. So everybody's running around talking about DNA, where we all came from. Everybody else seemed to have been comfortable where they came from, but the European on the world stage, he didn't really know where he came from. So now he's trying to tell us where we came from, though. In most of our cultures, there's archaeology, but then he takes that and rewrites our history. So let's look at this history to get to the mystery. Why are the women? Now here you see there's a lot of darker skinned women, but they're being led, right, by a white woman or a very light woman. Now, true, she could be an albino, she could be a very light skinned black woman and everything like that, but me thinks not, right? Me not think so, right? But look at this right here. Right, so she's showing her tatas right there. She's in the front. The men are behind. The men seem a little feminized. Right? No, I'm pointing to something because there's nothing new under the sun. So what we're experiencing today in this changing world, let me use that, in this transitioning world, right? This transitioning world kind of points to something that already, the thing that is, the thing that will be. Now, could it be that the woman were really, like, look at this picture right here. Could it be that the woman were really darker skinned woman and somebody is playing around with the archaeology? That could be a part of it too, right? Like we see right here, you can see how there's different layers of their complexion. You could tell that originally they had darker complexion, and they have the same basic phenotypes that we have certain black people, Ethiopians, East Africans have, some of these same phenotypes in other places in Africa too, right? It's not that stereotype. So here's, I guess, some of the men, right? The men here, and this is a famous picture, almost like, kind of reminds me of a little bit of a kind of a Jacob and Esau kind of a thing, or the twins, the two brothers, right? The duality. Here you can see they have darker skin complexions, here, right? So, but here, now look at these ones here, right? Are these the same woman right here? They seem a little similar, the phenotypes, how they show their features. And yes, black people do have these phenotypes. I could show you some Ethiopians and others, right, who can trace their black ancestors probably longer than some of us can trace over here for almost 400 years. Right? How many of y'all can go back, about 400 years and trace your maternal and your paternal lineage? For those who do, God bless you. For those who don't, come out of her, my people, right? But here, notice these. There seems to be a little bit of a difference. These seem to be some sort of goddesses. Notice these women are covered up, right? Their tatas are covered up, right? These women are showing their tatas, their titties, their breastises, so forth and so on, like hooters, right? These ones are showing, they seem to be some sort of goddesses, right? And they're very prominent in many features of Minoan culture. Now, Minoan, I know they had the Krakatoa. They had that Krakatoa. They cracked the Toa. The Krakatoa, where the mountain just blew up. It was almost like a Sodom and Gomorrah kind of a thing. But, when the mountain blew up, Gomorrah was the mountain. It was a volcano, right? And Sodom was the city. Right? But anyway, we know that by studying Ethiopically. But here, this is another example right here. It doesn't seem like there was any complexion on this one right here. You understand what I'm saying? The other ones you can see where it's fading a little bit. So maybe paint, wear, age, maybe some of the archaeologists tampering things, but not really with some of them, unless it's just so clever we haven't picked up on it yet. This is another example right here. So our question is, right, and some of them seem to also have some like Ethiopian, East Indian phenotypes too. I noticed that right here, right? So the question is this right here, right? Why were the Minoan, Javanite, pre-Greek Greeks, pre-Greek Greeks, why were they seeming to be led by, okay, this is getting to the Egyptian connection, right? To prove what people were talking about. You can see some of the cities and towns and everything, just to connect the dots. As Macy said, Egypt, the mouthpiece, right, for inner Africa, for the ancient, a lot of ancient truths we can find, the good, the bad, ugly. Here, these women also seem to be women here, but it could be men. It's kind of hard to tell, right, in some cases, right? And why does the woman, the priestess, the goddesses, in a lot of their artistic representation, they seem to appear to be very white. Like the men are dark reddish brown and the women are white. You know, like when they say like pale white. Is there something up with that? Are these special daughters? Is it like Cain? Remember Cain's lineage? Right? The daughters of, are they the daughters of men? Then we saw this right here. We're going to get into this hopefully a little bit more right here. Right? Just zooming in on some of it. The Minoan snake goddess. Right? And how a lot of their culture, right, bears witness to the biblical account of the scattering of people, but people carrying on a lot of these traditions that were at Bob El, the gate of El, that became Babal when Yahweh came down to see what the children of men, were doing, and, scattered, their tongues, the Babel, right? They got into the Babel, right? So this is a very interesting connection, connecting with the Minoans and the cultural things as we start to, look at the archaeology a little more, critically, right? As we get to grow in knowledge and, figure out what's what. This also is something like similar, to what was going on. So with the last art that we see, because they seem to have had a seemingly materialistically speaking, a high culture. Oh, an African answer. We got to see that book right there. See what they say about that. An African answer, right? But I'm asking, if the archaeology is to be believed, why does it seem as though it seemed like they were being led by white woman, some sort of white woman priestesses, some ancient feminism or something else going on right here, right? And then you can see that a lot of the modern day people who are into some of the things like Wicca, tarot, certain type of, beliefs or ways of life, they pick up on this. It seems like they find like a common spirit. Like, who were these women, right? And what seems to be interesting is that the last remains of their culture seems to be when these ones have taken over and then the culture was destroyed. Were these daughters of Canaan? That was one of the questions we want to have to ask. Is these daughters of Canaan? Right? So they call it the Minoan culture, so forth and so on. Were these daughters of Canaan? What is really going on here? What's the connection, the ancient link with these other tribes, groups of people? Now, here we're just getting into the linguistics, the language. So we're going to leave it off right there, but get into a little bit more on the Minoans, right? The Minoans, right? Who were the Minoans, right? Why does it seem like the men seem to be very reddish brown, like black, black men, but we say reddish brown just to describe the color, but they seem to have been led by these white goddesses. Like today when they say about you have to get off the white goddess, that's like in one sense you're on cocaine. You worshiping the porcelain goddess is like you have your head in the toilet. This is how we heard it. But what is going on? Does this link and does this prove something else in the biblical scriptural account, right? And were the Minoans black people? It's kind of clear that they were very, not just a tan. They had more than a tan, right? There was more than a tan right here. They had more than a Yul Brynner tan right here. It's very, very clear. Who were these people, right? What was their culture? And how does the biblical account testify as we do due diligence here in the study? So anyway, a little bit more, check out the description. Check the links in the description. Check the links in the description. Check out the podcast. Check out the main site, LOJS, Lion of Judah Society.org. Also check out the books. We're going to look through our library of available books. What do we have on this culture? And if we don't have too much, we need to get more on it because it's a part of filling in the missing links, right, in our biblical story, because here's to prove that when we approach the biblical study from a true perspective, it yields much more than it did from those racist calling himself Christian and doing the work of Antichrist, in Jesus' name. So I'm just saying that because that was very terroristic what they done to our people and also to much of humanity, right? But there's a new, now I don't say sheriff in town, because the tune I shot the sheriff, but who were these Minoan goddesses and why do they always appear to be, like white women in a sense? What's going on here? Is this a trick of the archaeologists? Maybe they scraped off the paint right there, or is there something? And they also have their breasts out like Hooters, but yet they are doing certain rites and rituals. Remember when Rebecca says that if Jacob had married the daughters of Heth, right, the daughters of Heth, what would her life be? Why did she not want her child to marry basically what would have been considered like Hooterats, like what Esau had done? Because Esau married some of these daughters of Canaan. And are the Canaanites white people? For real, for real.